Kia ora e te whānau. Welcome to this episode of Industry Insights. We've got quite a few special guests joining us from various representations of the Institute. So I'm going to start with an introduction of John Hemi. You take it away.
Thanks, Hannah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's John Hemi. I'm the chair of the New Zealand Institute of Building, but in my day job, I'm the Director of Construction Productivity at Te Waihanga, the New Zealand Infrastructure Commission. So I just wanted to share, first off, from a government and government employee perspective, some of the issues that are challenging our sector at the moment. So statistically, residential building consents peaked at just over 13,000 in March 2022, but the most recent quarter, 2 years later, they dropped by 36% down to about 8,400. And we all know that there's higher interest rates that we've historically had in the past, really slow house price growth and sales, and high recent cost increases or inflation or escalations, which have really made it hard for the developers to get projects to stack up.
John, I'm just going to stop you right there because we're just going to do an introduction of everyone. And then
sorry, Hannah.
No,
sorry.
You're okay. So, Graham Earl.
Yep. Hi, Graham Earl here from Love. I'm regional director there, and I represent the Canterbury Canterbury Committee on the National Board, and a member of the committee, and have been involved with the NZIB committee since 2017-18, I think it was. So yeah, it's been a wee while. Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. And Craig.
Afternoon all. My name is Craig Hopkins. I'm the CEO of Generation Homes, nationwide group home builder, and on the NZIOB side, so I chair the Northern region, and I'm also on the national board.
Thanks, Craig. And Jared.
Hi everyone, my name's Jared Blue. I'm a project manager for RCP. I'm based in Dunedin on the Dunedin Hospital project. I'm on the Southern Regional Committee, and I'm also the lead of the Otago branch of NZIOB.
Thanks, Jared. And Kirsten.
Kia koutou, I'm Kirsten Magnusson. I'm Deputy Chair of the National Institute of Building Board. I've been in the industry about 20 years, which always makes me feel old. In my day job, I own a marketing agency called Magnusson & Co.
Thanks, Kirsten. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today for what will hopefully be an insightful conversation on the state of the industry right now. So how things will run is each of our panelists will share their views and observations on the industry, and specifically within their role. We'll then delve a little deeper and hopefully get some tips and tricks, because collectively on this webinar, we've got a lot of years experience in the industry. We hope that today you walk away with some sense of optimism, but at the very least, we hope we can provide some sort of actions and tips and tricks when thinking about your own career and personal brand. So just a reminder for those watching to put your questions through Slido. We're going to ask and answer questions throughout the webinar, so there won't be kind of a specific set time for questions. So yeah, I've got it here and I'll be monitoring them. And so we're going to kick it off. Back to John Hemi, and I'm sorry you got going, but if you want to pick up where you left off, and we can.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah, and apologies for getting ahead of myself there. But the good news is that I've gotten all the bad news that I was going to mention out of the way in that first intro. So from there, I was going to talk about CoreLogic's recent stats. And CoreLogic have a construction cost price index that they produce, and I was looking at that earlier today. It was running at around 2 to 3%, during the period of 2015 to 2017, and then started to creep up when we got really busy as a sector, to 4 to 6% during about 2018 to 2019, dropped briefly to around 3% after COVID arrived in 2020, and then peaked at the high of over 10% in 2022, at the end of 2022. And we all know that the impact of that massive cost increases across the sector had on the viability of projects and stuff like that. So the good news is it's currently now down at 2.3%. And although it's still rising, it's back to the sort of levels that we're used to dealing with and planning for. The new government that's come in is hugely ambitious about getting projects going. They're introducing all sorts of measures that they're hoping will speed up consenting, making it more efficient and faster to get projects going, like the reform of the fast track consenting, changes to consenting itself and resource management processes. And they're really looking for lower cost solutions and getting better value for the money that they're spending. And the final point I wanted to make was around Te Waihanga and our pipeline. So I was speaking to our manager for the pipeline earlier today, and our quarterly snapshot of infrastructure pipeline, which includes social infrastructure like hospitals, schools, prisons and the like, as well as horizontal infrastructure, that pipeline of work, which is a high level of confidence that it's going to proceed, is growing steadily. It's at 122 billion at the moment. He's expecting it to carry on increasing in the quarter that's just closing this month. But one of the things they've been tracking in there is deferred and cancelled projects. And the deferred and cancelled projects feels like quite a low percentage compared to what the market is sensing out there. So in behind that is the pipeline is still robust, and I think that we're going through a short-term correction, but the government's ambition and the pipeline of work that we are tracking indicates that there's still a lot of work coming. And I guess it's really just riding out this, what I'm hoping is a short-term correction in the infrastructure space. I'm not so sure about the dynamics for the housing sector, whether the interest rates will eventually come down. House price sales stabilising and construction costs stabilising will help with that. But yeah, that's sort of, I guess, a bit of a snapshot of what's going on in the market, and my optimistic view on that we've got a short-term correction that is to be, we'll be at the other side of once the government. The other thing I was going to say about this, that short-term, local authorities do their long-term plans, and they get locked in at the beginning of the financial year, which is the beginning of next month. So there's an expectation that there'll be a lot more clarity around local authorities' spending intentions that will form from that. And a lot of the government's funding cycles are annual, unfortunately. And again, that annual period is coming to click over at the end of this month. So more certainty from that as well.
Thanks, John. In terms of where, is there a resource or a platform or, anything that you all know of that for people who, are wanting to kind of get these constant updates about where things are at? Is there anything that Te Waihanga or anywhere else for that matter provide these kind of snapshot updates?
So the quarterly pipeline update is every 3 months, and it relies on good information. It's available for anybody to interrogate. They're adding some interactive tools which will allow much more insightful information to be taken from it. But it is, unfortunately, the shockwave that's coming through at the moment has come really suddenly and is severe. And a lot of the metrics, a lot of the statistics are annual. Our pipeline is quarterly. It still feels like it's lagging behind what's currently being sensed in the marketplace out there. But yeah, the pipeline is available on Te Waihanga's website, and you can interrogate that. And the other stats that I was mentioning, I've pulled off published documents that are available from those various sources like CoreLogic and stuff, brands. Yeah.
Thanks, John. And I guess now we're, on the topic of that things are looking, tough for people. In your personal experience, having been in the industry for, I won't give a number.
40 years, you can say it, that's all right.
40 years, all right, 40 years. Your observations of over those 40 years, I mean, in your experience and your career progression, for people who are potentially feeling a bit nervous about what's going to happen to their job, that sort of thing, is there any kind of tips and tricks you can provide thinking about your kind of career progression and how that's turned out?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was lucky when the property market crashed at the end of the 80s. I had started on my OE, and when I came back from my OE, things were starting to pick up again in New Zealand. So that was convenient rather than deliberate. During the late 2010s, the whole market was very, very competitive and tough, like it is now. And a few companies fell over, and it was a tough time. But in 2013, things picked up again, and we've been riding a wave that has been quite significant for quite a long period of time, and we've got a correction now. I don't think it's going to be a long-term correction. I know the government's intentions are quite ambitious around doing a whole lot of stuff. The infrastructure deficit, which gets talked about a lot, is still there. Figuring out how to address that is not going to go away. So there is going to be a need to do work, and I think we're just suffering that initial wing of a correction that is feeling really severe. That's my optimistic view. Look, hang in there is what I'd say, and use the time to broaden your skills. I'm currently doing a digital skills for the workforce online course, which is free through Academy EX, and I'm finding that hugely informative. And being able to use AI and all the tools that are available will help me with productivity going forward. So that now's the time to really invest in yourself. So
I like that. Invest in yourself. We'll move on to Graham Earl. From your, I'd like to hear your kind of observation where you guys stand with Naylor Love and from a manager's point of view.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it's a varied market out there. There's certain regions that are actually still reasonably buoyant. In the larger space, as far as the larger projects go, Auckland and Wellington are probably regions that are actually ticking above where they were a couple of years ago. But then you come to the Christchurch, Queenstown, Dunedin markets, which are very, very tight. And there's a lot of competition, I suppose, for the projects that do actually get released out to the market. I think moving forward, yes, there's a lot of briefing sessions. There's a lot of talk around what's going to hit the market from government, especially within the next 2 to 3 years, which is fine, but we still do have a little bit of a deficit between then and now that we all are trying to plug, whether it be local work or otherwise. We're just noticing a little bit more movement now in the private sector. It's starting to drift back as a few opportunities. I wouldn't say they're actually cemented. Some of them are actually coming in as design build opportunities. So when you get to a tight market, developers are less likely to invest a whole heap of money in design processes and the like, and they'll want to run quite a number of opportunities along the ruler before they actually commit. So it does open up the opportunity for a builder to obviously forge a relationship, but also expose a little bit of cost that may be incurred to try and get a project to actually work. And the cost of actually building a building has probably stabilized significantly from what it was 2 years ago. That's helping. Interest rates, developers are still thinking about it needs to drop at least another 1%. I don't think that's going to happen in the near future. And the reality is operating in an environment of 6 to 7% interest rates was pretty much the norm. down at 2 and 3%, it's abnormal, and people probably got a little bit more comfortable with that, which is really unfortunate. And we're back into a more operating environment. I suppose, the big thing for people is especially if you're looking for a job, and there is a lot of students that have entered the polytechs and the universities 2 to 3 years ago, and now coming out the end of their degrees or diplomas, and they're the ones now looking for opportunities. Now, they've got to go out and recommend, I recommend that knocking on people's doors, even in this tight market, people that actually make an effort are the ones that will actually be looked upon and given the first opportunity, rather than waiting for an advertisement or otherwise to pop up on Stuff or the like, or on Seek, I mean. So, it's really a little bit of positive sort of pressure on yourselves to try and go out there, market yourself, make yourself the best you possibly can be. And then obviously creating that brand, as John was sort of mentioning before, is you've got to create a brand that people will know you. And yes, I'm like John, I've been in the industry for over 40 years now, 41 years. And it's I've been through my fair share of downturns. The largest, I think, would be obviously the share market crash in the late 80s. And I think for me, it was an opportunity to actually then commence my OE. And I went overseas for 3 years working in Australia. Had intentions to go further afield after that, but things started to pick up here in New Zealand again, so I came back. So it does go swings and roundabouts. And the reality is, as again John said, the sustained period of growth that we've had from sort of 2011, especially in Christchurch, up until recently, is probably the longest and most robust one we've ever experienced. So it wasn't the norm, even though that's our objective, is to become the norm. So yeah, watch the space.
Thanks, Graham. Last week when we talked about doing this webinar, and we were talking about the ways in which we can kind of give people some things that they can do now if, their companies are kind of having to pull back a little bit in various areas. And you mentioned things like offering to shorten your hours, or, offering up different ways of working. Or can you just elaborate on that a little bit, just in terms of what you're seeing out there? Because I guess if people are in a position to be able to do that and to potentially help, in the long run, yeah.
Yep, it's I suppose in the downturn, it's very important that you're flexible. The reality is, and if you look back on history, every time there is a downturn, the works that are actually available appear to be out in the regions, so away from the main centres, which may mean actually some temporary relocation, or actually going and maybe move to a town that you actually like and staying there. I don't know, but there are opportunities, and being fairly flexible for your employer to actually go and uptake those opportunities does make it a little bit easier. Yeah, the training thing that John mentioned is another thing. Flexible hours. The reality is most of us like working for the employer that we are working with, and we don't want to basically have the hassle of having to find alternative. And we know that this is a short-term situation, but it may be that you become and put yourself forward for some flexible working conditions, whether it be hours or different responsibilities, maybe a bit of job sharing for some roles as well. There's a whole heap of things that keeps people gainfully employed. And I know as a director, it's not our intention we don't want to let anyone go. So we want to be able to accommodate and look after our people. And the reality is, you might have 200 people that work for you, but you're actually supporting near on 600 or 800 people, including their families. So it's a big responsibility. So it's not an easy decision when you look at the other sides of it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So Craig, maybe a similar view from you, just in terms of observations and how your company and protecting and supporting staff.
Yeah, it's interesting. Coming out of the commercial world into the residential world is quite a quite a different aspect. And I just want to touch on probably a couple of points that have been brought up twice already, which is probably a sentiment throughout the country, and that's around interest rates. We talk about interest rates as being an issue or a problem, and sort of Graham just alluded to it before, that the norm, if we look at the average for the last 20 years, is actually 6.47%. At the moment, you can go to a bank and get a 3, 4, 5-year loan at 6.39. So if you look at those numbers, it's not actually interest rates are our challenge. I think if you go back the last couple of years, where the challenges happened, when you bought a house, you bought 80% it was the build, 20% of it was land, and now we're around 50% house, 50% land. So, you know, those land prices have got to a point that have pushed the numbers up, which then make a bit of a challenge. Just recently in Tauranga, the council have gone back and reevaluated the entire Tauranga region and dropped 20% off land values, which is probably bringing it back to where the market is, which would then hopefully stimulate the market going forward. So there's lots of different things that are happening, and we're a little bit counter-cyclical to commercial. We probably had our bottom out last year, and now we're already there, and we're starting to sort of see those growth spurts come back up again. A lot of our biggest challenges that the existing house market and people moving or trying to sell their existing houses to then go into new houses, and that's where some of the challenge happens as well. So for us, yes, banks are a challenge, and that it's about lending, but it's not so much about interest rates. It's probably more around people's LVR ratios and all those sort of things. That's where some of the challenges are happening for us in that space.
And in terms of what you're doing for your staff, and I guess if things are looking better for you, then maybe it's not as big of an issue. But the people watching today, in terms of some takeaways, what would you suggest, Craig?
Yeah, I think Graham alluded to it before. When you're a director or an owner of a business, the last thing you want to do is go through redundancies or things like that. And the last thing you also want to do is spend money. But we're actually doing that. We're actually spending money on our team. We're actually taking the opportunity at the moment to look at our resources. Do we have the right people in the right roles? How do we upskill them in those roles to be better, so that when it does get busy, they actually function better and we get more productivity out of them? What are our systems? Are they right and fit for purpose going forward? The biggest thing we do as an industry is when it's busy, we just go hell for leather and hope that we come out the other end. So in these downtimes, it's the perfect opportunity to actually, upskill your team, look at your systems, move things around so that as things get busier, you become more proficient in what you're actually doing. And Graham alluded to earlier about people potentially moving regions. For us, it's a similar sort of thing. We've got a region that's a little bit quiet, so some of our team have gone, hey, I'll go and work down in this region for a while. So they've just gone on a secondment for a couple of months to go and work in another region and enjoy that, and hopefully get some different skill sets from working in that region to improve what they do and bring maybe back some different ideas around how they can do things differently. So that's probably the differential at the moment. As an owner, you don't want to spend money, but it's the perfect time to spend money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just in terms of your career progression, personally, Craig, I mean, you spoke about how you jumped from commercial to residential. And I guess for people who are maybe in a situation where they're thinking of maybe the other opportunities out there, I mean, what's your advice to someone who maybe isn't 100% happy or would like to see what the other side's like, or not necessarily commercial to residential, but as a whole, a new venture?
Yeah, look, I'm the anomaly of probably everyone else on this panel at the moment. I haven't been in construction for 40 years, and I've gone from retail to veterinary industry to property management all over the place. I think the biggest thing alluded to before was around your skill sets. Skills are transferable. Coming out of commercial into residential, it's a very different sort of mindset about how you run it, but it's still the same skill sets. So anyone in those managerial roles, you don't necessarily have to be focused on that one thing. Look at the skill sets you've got and how do they apply. They might apply to some design management. They might apply to, you might be brave and step down Kirsten's route and go into the marketing department. You know, we've just employed a new salesperson who was a builder, who was on the tills building, and they've joined us in the sales space. So I think you've got to look at, don't put the blinkers on. The skill sets that you actually have are quite transferable to a lot of different positions in our business, and whether that's commercial or residential, you can transfer those skills all over the place. I think too often we put the blinkers on and go, right, I can only do this one thing. But if you actually look at other roles within the industry and you start looking at what the position descriptions are and what they're looking for, you'll probably find you can tick a good percentage of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess this is a good segue to Jared. Speaking last week, Jared was telling us about his pivot when he kind of came faced with a redundancy. So Jared, do you want to just talk us through your experience, you know, all the things that led to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I've been in construction about 10 years now, mostly in residential and commercial construction, now in client-side project management for the last 5 years, but probably about 6-7 years into my career, I've been on a major health project in Christchurch for a number of years, and at the conclusion of that project, based on that company not having sufficient work in the region, a large number of our team were faced with redundancy, which was quite confronting at the time. I just had a baby. Our first child was 2 months old when I got that news, so that was quite a lot to deal with. But it led me to go through a process of reassessing, as sort of Craig and others have touched on, my transferable skills and really look at what I wanted to do in the future. I've been going down a pathway of doing similar roles for the beginning part of my career. And I had the opportunity to kind of look at my skills, look at the direction I was heading, and think, right, now that I'm faced with this situation, I've been given a nudge where I need to make some moves. And what moves am I going to make now to set me in the direction that I want to be in say, 5, 10, 20 years' time? So a key part of that for me was leveraging the contacts that I had in the industry and sort of outside of the industry, mentors as well. And from that, spent a number of months working with different people, speaking with different people, interviewing with different people. And I ended up taking a role with RCP where I am now, which is adjacent to what I was doing, but different sector of the industry, being client-side project management, which I hadn't had experience in prior. So it was a journey for me, but looking back now, a good quote that I often comes to mind for me is, not getting what you want can sometimes be the best thing for you in the long term. And I think that was the case for me. You know, at the time, it wasn't an ideal situation, but now I am glad that I had that prompt to go through the process of really identifying what I wanted to do, identifying what I needed to do to get there, and the skills that I had that could lead me in that direction. And that has ultimately led me now to a really great and fulfilling role for me. I've since moved from Christchurch to Dunedin for this role, and it's been great for my family and for me on a professional level.
Well, I guess that the story that it's resilience, right? I mean, you can find yourself in a rut, and it's the choices you make from there to what you can turn it into. And I guess around that idea of personal brand, of you know, making the most of a crappy situation, is there anything, you know, that you would encourage in terms of I know you said mentors, you know, how do people find some people to talk to about what potentially could be next? Is it a matter of just sort of sending out the emails and hoping someone will respond? I mean, how did you kind of make those connections and see who could help you in the industry?
As Graham touched on, I think a key thing is having relationships and networking and putting yourself out there so that people know who you are. If you're in a situation like that and you've kind of been ticking along with your role sort of on a project level or at a kind of local level for a certain amount of time, and not doing that regular networking and going out speaking to people and building your brand, then if you're faced with a situation like that, it can be quite difficult to easily pivot, and you are kind of left with potentially some other people in the same situation doing the cold call and emails, which is a bit more difficult situation to be in. So yeah, networking events, I mean, NZIOB is a great example, has a large number of networking events of different types with different content, but the key crossover between those events is being able to network with your industry peers across quite a range of different parts of the industry as well, which is fantastic. So yeah, getting outside of your comfort zone and attending events and doing things outside of your day job, I think was a key part for me, and that's something I've really taken forward, is trying to build a really wide network. So if I'm ever in the same situation again, I've got a really wide contact book that I could reach out to, and yeah, putting yourself, doing things to differentiate yourself from the masses is really crucial, I think, for anyone in our industry, in any industry, especially during times of downturn or times where you're faced with a situation where you need to pivot. Being able to approach mentors, contacts, and lean on those around you to help you through that period is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned there, Jared, about networking and I guess in terms of New Zealand Institute of Building and how we support people, is that our members are pan-industry, and when we talk about career progressions or pivoting, I mean, our events have people from all over the industry, from architects to design managers, and you know, we hope that people come to these events and kind of, you know, meet people that are not just solely in the role that they are in, but can learn from, because our industry does offer multiple, you know, roles, and you know, the ability to kind of move between them is absolutely possible. So I think that's a really good point, Jared. And I guess this whole idea of kind of building your brand and you know, lack of a better words, selling yourself so that you don't kind of get left behind, which is Kirsten's absolute kind of reason for being here. So Kirsten, can you give us kind of a bit of an overview on strategies and things that you think would help people in a time like this?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Yeah, absolutely talking my language here. I get really excited when people talk about branding, because it actually doesn't happen very often in the construction industry. But I really believe that in a downturn, you've got the perfect opportunity to leverage your marketing. You can maintain your business, and actually I think you can grow it. There's a few key strategies that are really important. And by implementing a few marketing strategies, psychologically, it's a really good thing. Not only does it keep yourself busy, it keeps your team busy. It sends a message to the market that, you know, that you can pivot, that you can progress in this market, that you're confident, that, you know, that you've got the backbone to get out there and do something, even though things are really tough. So I think it's really important. And the key strategies for me, they all leverage around customer and customer relationships. So now is the time where you don't want to lose a customer. It is so much more expensive to get a new customer than it is to retain the customer that you've got. So you want to be talking to your customers all of the time. You want to be encouraging your team to talk to them. You want to be keeping people up to date with what you're doing. You want to be sharing personalized information, not just blasting out an EDM, you know, an electronic email. You want to have personalized messages. You want to be picking up the phone and saying, hey, can we go for coffee? Let's go for a beer. Your team is doing the same. And you want to be getting feedback. You don't want to wait for a customer to have a problem and have to relay that back to you. You want to front foot that, and you want to improve your service offer accordingly before you get there. So that's where I would start. I think the next place to go from there is to think about how you're talking in this market. So we're kind of a bit down at the moment, aren't we? We've, like, oh, it's winter and nothing, nothing's going right. But we've got to adapt our messaging, and we've got to be positive. So as a marketer, I watch TV ads, that's my business. So, but after COVID, Briscoe's and Harvey Norman are great examples. They modified their tone. It used to be like, buy, go Harvey Norman, really out there, really pushing you to buy. It, just like that, it switched. And then all of a sudden it's a softer tone, it's understanding, it's encouraging. So in the construction industry, we need to be exactly the same. So we want to really understand our value proposition, what it is that we offer, what it is that we do better than our competitors, what our point of difference is. And we want to take that to the market, and we want to be really understanding. We want to craft our marketing messages so that our clients understand that we understand they're facing challenges, just like I am, everyone else is facing challenges. So we want to be really empathetic, and we want to be really solution oriented. So we need to focus on how our products and services can solve specific problems, and particularly around improving efficiencies, because everybody's trying to save money right now. So if that's something that you can offer, then that's absolutely how your tone of your messaging should be coming across. Other ways in the market right now, with people being in the problem together, let's work together. So say you're I'm not quite sure who's in this audience, but if you're a structural engineer, then maybe you want to work alongside a steel fabricator and work together and promote yourselves together, bundle your work, add some efficiencies in there and network together. And that way you can leverage each other's brands, and you can cut through, and you can talk to each other's audiences. Just makes you that much bigger and stronger together. And doing that, also with yourself, you want to highlight any cost-saving measures you might have, or efficiencies that you can offer. Maybe you've got a streamlined design process that can save time. You might have a product that can save costs over the lifetime of the project. So talk on the whole of the project, not just in what you can deliver today. I could go on for hours, actually. There's just so many things that, so many opportunities in this market. I mean, really, I need to stop now because I could probably go for 20 minutes of ideas.
But it is that idea of just taking a moment and figuring out what your, selling points are. What do you do really well?
Yeah. Work out your value proposition. Work out what you can offer people that no one else can offer, and work out how in this market that can really add benefits. So your cost efficiencies, your efficiencies of scale, whatever they might be, and be really succinct about what you're messaging to the market.
So if we are talking about just for example, a project manager that gets made redundant, I guess there probably will be a lot of people thinking, gosh, all these other project managers are in the same position. How do I, put my best foot forward to be considered for a job that potentially 20 people are going for?
Yeah, well, that's really tough, isn't it? The key way to go about this, it's the same as an individual as it is for a company putting into a tender, is to get your work out there. So create case studies about previous projects. So take the time to put the detail in it, put information in there, get everything factually correct. Take the time or make the effort to get really nice photography. If you're an organization, invest in professional photography. If you're an individual, actually go to the project and ask them if you can borrow their photography, and get that out and start sharing it on your LinkedIn profile. There's nothing wrong with asking your friends to like your posts and to share your posts as well. And likewise, if you've got friends on there and need, like their stuff and share their stuff, work together, work as a team.
Get your name known, name out there. Oh, thanks, Kirsten. I know that would have been really beneficial for not only people but their companies as well. we've got 5 more minutes, and I thought it would be a good sort of rounding out to talk a little bit about mental health, because I imagine for a lot of people in this uncertain environment, you know, potentially feeling really overwhelmed and unsure kind of how to find advice or help. So I just wanted to put out there about the different organisations that help the industry, the construction industry specifically, which is Mates in Construction, Site Safe, and Chaz NZ. I will, as a follow-up, be sending out their links to their addresses, their web addresses. All these providers offer different sort of toolkits and things for people to look at different resources that you as a manager can use, but also your staff. So being able to kind of provide a place where your staff could go to have a look if they need a bit of understanding on what's going on with, you know, the industry at the moment. I also wanted to mention the New Zealand Institute of Building's resources page. We have a podcast called Tall Stories, which has been around for about 1.5 years now, and we've talked about it quite a lot in terms of career progression, and that no career is kind of a linear progression, and that basically what Tall Stories is a interview with 2 people, usually a sort of younger next gen and a older wise head, on their career progressions. And more often than not, actually, I could probably safely say every single story that we've heard is about, you know, kind of a move from this role to this role and then back to this role. They're really interesting, and they cover kind of all the roles in the industry. So definitely go and check out Tall Stories. And then the other resources that we have on that page are our recordings of our Building Legends seminars, which cover a array of different topics. So as John and Graham alluded to, you know, now's the time to sort of build your CPD, build your knowledge, and yeah, there's so much sort of stuff out there that you can use to kind of better understand the situation, but also yourself and your toolkit, what you have to bring forward. I just thought I'd end with maybe a little note from each of our presenters about kind of words of encouragement, you know, whether it's around the mental health or just, you know, the state of the industry, and what yeah, some words of wisdom. So we'll start with you, John.
Thanks, Hannah. I'd just say, if you do find yourself in that unfortunate situation that your existing role is coming to an end, approach it as an opportunity. So many times, and you know, Jared's story and others' stories, is you can reinvent yourself and get yourself in a better place than you were if you approach it with that mindset. So have that mindset rather than you know, a despairing one, and it'll serve you really, really well. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Thanks, John. And Graham, Bill.
Yep, don't give up. At the end of the day, this is, as everyone has alluded, an opportunity to actually strengthen some of those relationships and the skills that you have, and, you know, create the brand. And I think this is what will actually hold you in very good stead moving forward, whether it be a business or as an individual. So I really encourage to step outside the safe zone and do some extra training or otherwise, and try some new things. So well done.
Thanks, Graham. Craig.
I think there's a saying, was it Albert Einstein said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And I think that's what the other 2 have just reiterated, that, you know, and Jared said as well, that there is opportunity. You've got to look on the positive side and go, how can I change this to my benefit? How can I do better from this?
Thanks, Craig. And Jared.
Yeah, perspective's everything, I think. Just try and ground yourself if you're in a difficult situation. Just try and get yourself out of the moment, as difficult as it is in reality, and think, you know, other things that are absolutes to me today and critical to me today going to be critical to me in 5 years' time? And sometimes the answer is yes, a lot of the time the answer is no. So yeah, just try and stay grounded and don't let things get on top of you.
Thanks, Jared. And last but certainly not least, Kirsten.
Be a nice person. I think everyone remembers a person that's treated them with respect and has always been kind and generous with their time. Just be that person, because you'll be the one that's remembered at the end of the thing. And when the jobs and opportunities start happening, they'll remember you for being decent.
Thanks, Kirsten. And thanks all of you for joining us today on this episode of Industry Insights. I was concerned about how we could kind of bring a positive spin on the state of the industry at the moment, but I really do feel that hopefully people will walk away today with a bit of optimism and at least some sort of tips and tricks to help them progress forward. But yeah, just a reminder to those watching that there are those websites, Mates in Construction, Site Safe, Chas NZ, and New Zealand Institute of Building that have resources for you to look at and hopefully help you when you need it. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time. Ka kite anō.
Thanks.